But yeah, we're talking about deployment. And I think the first thing that I asked Brady, besides like, hi, was what even is deployment? Like, I get it, right? It's taking things from A and putting them on B. And so, you have to put the things that you develop locally onto something in the cloud. But there's a lot of things that come into it when it comes to automation, all the scalability and resiliency. And then there are also a ton of different places and they all have different definitions. And I guess, Brady, I'm sorry, I should let you introduce yourself, but you can do that when you start your demo. Brady's the best. He doesn't need an introduction. But yeah, so if you look at the eShop sample, which I know has come up a bunch today, the day of eShop, there are 3 different front ends, 5 APIs, 2 like processors, which could be an Azure function or similar, 4 databases, the cache, the event bus, and then the separate telemetry solution. And so deploying all of those things, that's like what, another 17 individual things that might have their own deployment mechanism, right? And there are a lot of issues that come with that. Like, you have to provision things if they don't already exist and not accidentally re-provision things that do exist and overwrite them. All of these things need to be able to talk to each other in a secure way. Of course, you might have a continuous integration system. You have your whole testing infrastructure. You need to make sure all of that works. And then you have to handle the issues and push changes and rapidly react to things as the world does the things that the world does. And so, there are a lot of tools that can help. Kubernetes, I know Brady's going to talk about, is obviously like the go-to in terms of just building really scalable, deployed microservice apps. But, you have to do YAML, bicep, whatever it is. There's going to be some amount of specialized knowledge. It's hard to do locally. This meme cracks me up every time because it is true. Like, I tried to peel back the onion of Kubernetes and I put it away. I was like, nope, you know what? That's not for me. Nope, it's okay. Because it's going to be a lot to learn. And there are people who are great at it. And with Aspire, you don't have to get rid of how you deploy. We don't overwrite anything. So, don't worry about that. But if you do feel like you could use help with deployment, Aspire is a really good way to do that. So that's what we're going to talk about. We showed this slide earlier, but yeah, you can do it how you do it today. But what Brady's going to show is the Azure Dev CLI. There are ways to do it with AWS and, of course, with Visual Studio, which is what this video shows here. Right-click publish, everyone's like favorite / least favorite. Everyone loves to hate right-click publish, but it works. And when it works, it's great. And this is just using AZD under the hood. So lots of really cool, just like, things that the AZD folks and Brady and the folks on the Aspire side have done to make this a really seamless experience, especially, if you don't have an existing deployment infrastructure in place. So with that, Brady, it's all you. And I'm just going to sit here and heckle. So it's fine. Oh, no, my screen is still sharing. Unshare my screen, please.
Oh, there. Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. There's my screen. That's perfect. So what I've got is just a couple of quick little demos to kind of walk through today. The video that Maddy just showed shows how Visual Studio, you can literally do right-click publish. You can essentially right-click your Aspire Appos project, which you've probably seen a bunch of today. And you can just do one deployment. And instead of having to deploy individual projects one by one, you can just deploy the whole thing, kit and caboodle, all at once. That's pretty exciting. And the way we got that was with our friends in the AZD crew. So what I'll show you here is I've got my, canonical silly demo app that I did at Build, Rock, Paper, Orleans, or Rock, Paper, Aspire, I guess, is really what it is today. And it's just a game. It's just kind of a self-playing game that bots play. So you can see right here, this is the app actually running. And you'll see that this app is running out in container apps. So you see that right now. Now, what I did first was to essentially drop out to my command line and do an AZD init. Now, you can do this at the root, the solution root, or you can do this in your Apphost folder. I've already done this in my Apphost folder. I'm just going to show you what it looks like here. So I can just do an AZD init from the command line. And what it's going to do first is going to say, do you want me to pull down a template, an AZD template, or do you want me to use code in the current directory? I want you to use code in the current directory. It's going to go ahead and scan my directory tree figure out that I have a .NET Aspire app, and since .NET Aspire and AZD get along real well, thanks to our friends in the AZD crew. Essentially what will happen here is it just knows what to do. Just dynamically figures it all out. And it will go ahead and tell me, do you want to go ahead and, create an environment and start provisioning your app? I'm not going to do that here because I've actually already set that up. But what I would show you is, the experience that Maddie just showed you inside of Visual Studio. Essentially, we just do what you saw here. We shell out to AZD. The folks in the AZD crew were nice enough to kind of give us an API that we could call. So that's kind of nice. So VS actually calls AZD under the covers and does all the work for you. So that's pretty exciting. What you can look at over here, if I click on my Azure tab, this is actually the AZD. This is actually the AZD environment kind of showing up in my deployed Azure cloud, which I could pull up right. Hide the essentials. I could pull up right here is what it looks like when it's actually deployed out to Azure. So you can see right there is the app all deployed. You can see 7 or 8 different container apps that are deployed, as well as my container app environment. If I wanted to turn on the dashboard, I could turn that on. And then if I wanted to actually look at those individual resources up here using the existing tools, I could go right here to my container apps node, and you can see all the individual container apps that I want to party on. So that kind of shows like how not only you can do this from the command line, but how you could also do this from within Visual Studio, since Visual Studio uses the same thing that's in the command line. But it doesn't stop there. Pull up this article real quick from our wonderful friends in the Docs crew. And you can see right here that this is, essentially how to do, everything in CI/CD. And if you scroll down in this, you'll see that we show you how to do this in GitHub Actions as well as in ASDO. And essentially, I've copied out a couple of these little things and augmented an existing pipeline flow that I've got set up right here. So if I were to show you my provision and deploy, which kind of does the whole thing, essentially, I'm just pulling in some environment variables that I got in my Aspire in my repo here. And the way I did that was at the command line, I run AZD pipeline config after I've already done that AZD edit. And what that'll do is that'll just inject all those secrets and everything that my actions are going to need to run directly into my repo instead of having to do it manually. It's a lot easier. Now what I can do over here is I can go into one of these secrets. Pardon me, it's that time of day. I'll change this one environment variable to be a 4. And before I change it, I'm going to move this over here so you don't see all the other ones I don't want you to see. And what that will essentially do is set me up to go ahead and create an entirely new environment directly inside of Azure. So what I'll do now is I'll just go over here and I'll select this provision and deploy all. Pardon me. And now I'll go over here and I'll say run workflow. And what this is going to do, this is one of the things that bugs me about GitHub Actions. Sometimes I have to hit F5 to see this. What this will do is this will actually use the same AZD provision and AZD deploy features that you would use both from within your command line and also within Visual Studio directly from within CI/CD. And what I've done is I've actually carved those up into 2 files like you saw. One of them is just provision and deploy. And then the other one is provision. And the idea behind this is I might want to just create my environment and not deploy anything to it. Whereas this one would do, kind of a brand new environment, which is sort of what you would see over here in this running right now. So in a minute, we'll have a brand new environment out in my Azure stuff. But Maddie,
Brady, do you mind zooming in just a touch?
Sure. We'll do what now? Do you mind what?
Zooming in.
Zooming in a touch? Holy.
Sorry. Thanks. I don't know if I'm too loud.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Perfect. I can pause right here if you have any questions about this part that I haven't seen pop up in the chat because I don't want to use YouTube's bandwidth today. But do we have any questions so far on the AZD and Azure Container Apps typing part of this? Sounds like
lots of questions, just lots of excitement. Very happy about Orleans showing up, of course. Thanks, Napalm. And then, a couple of questions about CI/CD, but I don't know if you want to get into that rabbit hole just yet.
You can go ahead and ask him since we're already running the CI/CD thing. My build just failed, so I need to figure that one out. But go ahead and, what sort of questions are we getting about CI/CD at this point?
So the first one I saw was from, where is it? Scroll. Oh my gosh, we had a lot of chat. How do you deploy to existing resources in Azure if you already have container apps? That was the first one I saw, which hopefully is an easy answer.
Pretty easy. I mean, if you already have existing resources running in Azure today, you can, AZD is smart enough to know, okay, I don't need to provision that. It's already been provisioned. I don't need to configure that. It's already been configured. So if you're already using AZD to do your ups and downs and whatever, you can just keep using it because, like I said, it'll figure out the diff and only deploy what needs to be deployed. If what you're saying is you want to, you have existing container apps into which you want to deploy your Aspire projects that are now Aspire, whereas before they might not have been Aspire. As Maddie kind of pointed out on the first slide of her presentation, everything that you've used before will still work. Anything that you've used in the past to deploy .NET Core, you can still, or .NET Core 5, 6, 7, whatever, you can still use with Aspire projects. So anything that you're already using, if you're using Jenkins, if you're using TeamCity, if you're using any other CI/CD product, you can continue to use those as long as you augment it with one little tweak in your workflow file, which I would have to open up this and go right here to my GitHub. And I would just show you the one thing you'll probably need to add is going to be this set of code right here. You'd probably need to install the Aspire workload during your build. This is reflected in the docs. Thank you to the doc writers who submitted that. So you would need to do that in either your Azure DevOps environments or your GitHub Actions environments. You would need to install the Aspire workload prior to doing anything with Aspire. So that is probably one difference between your pipeline you have today and your pipeline you would have tomorrow. So hopefully that answers that question.
It did for me. The other one I saw was, does this work with Azure hosted CI/CD agents?
Azure hosted CI/CD agents.
Yeah.
I am not familiar. What would that be, like a Kudu, or what would an Azure hosted CI/CD agent be? I wonder.
That's a good question. We're going to have to wait for the delay of the chat.
Yeah, if we're talking about Azure DevOps, then yes, the doc reflects that. Let me pull up the doc again. If I go back over to our document right here, you'll see we've also got Azure Pipelines. So we do have the Azure Pipelines option available as well. So you can see how to do that in Azure Pipelines. Hopefully that's what you were asking. If not, you can definitely ping me offline on LinkedIn or whatever. It's easy. So.
And then, of course, we're starting to hear some Kubernetes from Napalm codes. So I'll let you keep chugging along because I know I kind of maybe know what you might talk about at some point. So
cool. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Okay, so what we've talked about here is one of my favorite things, PaaSes. Our fantastic container PaaS, Azure Container Apps. But what I've got over here is a simpler project. Essentially, this is this file, new Aspire. And I have created a repo so we can see the differences that we'll make as we chug along here. So I've got this open, and I'm going to flip to my beautiful terminal, which has a lot of details in it we'll talk about. You can see right here, this is my Azure sub. It's kind of a story in a console. I haven't updated in a couple of weeks, sorry. This is the Kubernetes cluster that I'm currently partying on, which you'll see here in a moment with VS Code. This is my gnarly rig. Thank you, Damien, for building it. And then this is the directory in which I've CD'd my app host directory, because the way you'll see in a moment with Aspirate, it kind of likes it when you are in a app host directory first. So what I'm going to show you here is an open source first project that was contributed that we've been collaborating on. It's called Aspirate. You can see here on the window. And I like it. You can see that I like electronic music. Back in the 90s, there was a band called Alternate. I'm going to get a lot of jokes about that. They were kind of ahead of their time. But what I'm going to show you here is some quick little features on how you can use Aspirate to do, Aspire with Kubernetes. So the first thing I've done is I've got my Docker desktop Kubernetes cluster running right over here. You can see that I recently clicked this fantastic button to reset my Kubernetes cluster. If you use Montaquila or something else, that's fine. It's cool. But you can see I don't have anything running. All right. So what I want to do first is essentially see if my application, my little .NET Aspire application, will run fine directly inside of my local Kubernetes cluster. So what I'll do first is just type aspirate run and hit enter. And I love this. So the first thing is I have to give it a password for my secrets. Actually, I typed it the same way twice. I did. It's going to ask me some questions. Sorry for the purple. I know that's not very accessible. I'll go ahead and select these. I'm going to go and select all components. So I want to deploy both my API service and my web front end directly to my local Kubernetes cluster. I'll go ahead and hit enter. Do I want to deploy the Aspire dashboard? Yes, I do. I'll hit yes here. Now it's going to go ahead and do some stuff. And it's essentially just working locally. So on my local, Docker environment, et cetera, my local Kubernetes environment. Essentially, it's going to go ahead and run. It's going to deploy those in a moment. It's going to ask me, do you want to always pull them or only if they're not present? Why do extra work? Do I want to deploy all the manifests to a custom namespace? Absolutely, because OCD. And I'll just call it demo namespace 001 because I'll probably do at least 100. I'll hit OK here. Do I want to deploy the generated manifest to a Kubernetes cluster defined in my kubeconfig file? Yes, and there's only one right now, and it is my Docker desktop local instance, but I'll promise we'll do something more interesting in just a minute. So what I'll do next is I'll show you that these have all been deployed. I will go ahead and click on my web front end. I will open up that node port, and boom, we're working. If I go to the weather, you can see that now I am, hitting my weather API. And I'm getting back data, and you can see that that is indeed caching just as you would expect for any file new Aspire app to work. Now, I'd also flip over here to my VS Code environment one more time. And I would show you, I go over here to namespaces and just hit refresh. It's not a Microsoft demo unless you say every. I'm going to select this and say use namespace. And then when I expand the workloads right here and expand deployments, you will see there are my deployments. Those are all the my Aspire stuffs. They've been deployed as well as the Aspire dashboard. Now, if you were to click on the Aspire dashboard inside of a Kubernetes environment, you will notice there's one tab missing, and that tab is resources. Essentially, I asked some teammates if we know why that happens. I could explain it, but I wouldn't do it justice. Essentially, when you F5, you've got our underlying host. And it knows how to basically surface those resources in the dashboard. When you're running it in Kubernetes, there's not something in there yet. So we'll have to write that. So that's not there yet. I don't know if I didn't do it justice. I'm sorry. We'll get there. I'll just understand it and explain it better next time. So you can see here that I've actually done a deployment to my local Kubernetes instance, which is pretty cool. But we want to actually deploy this out to our Azure Kubernetes instance. So what I'm going to do first is clear my screen. And what I'll show you is that we've dropped a couple of files, aspirate state, and then my manifest, my Aspire manifest, which you probably saw folks talk about today. I'm going to delete those because I don't want to inadvertently deploy to my local environment again. And what I'll do now is I'll go over here and I'll show you first that in another window, which is not the StreamYard window, right here, you will see that I have a Azure container registry instance set up right here. And I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to copy out the URL for that instance. Okay, let me grab that right here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to type ACR login. And you'll see here I've got it. I've already done this before. So what'll happen here is if I were to go through the process of trying to use Aspirate against a live AKS cluster, I'm going to need to have a live ACR registry to push my containers images into. If I haven't logged into that yet, I'm going to get an error. So I'm going to go ahead and do that using the ACR login command, which you'll see right here, and that'll just log me in really quickly. It's going to tell me that I can omit that in the future. I always forget that. Oh, sorry. And now I'm logged in, and we can go party. So what I've got here first is, again, I've just got my source code, so I don't have any YAML or any Kubernetes-isms here whatsoever. So the first thing I'll do is I'll hit aspirate init one more time, and it's going to say, do you want to, specify a default container registry? I absolutely do. So I'm going to want you to push my images there. So I'll go ahead and paste that URL. Do I want to set the value? I'll go ahead and take the defaults for essentially the rest of it, and that's fine. I'll take the defaults here. So now I've done aspirate init, which is initialize this area, and what that does is it kind of gets me started and lays down a couple of files. In this case, it's probably going to save that Aspire, Kate's demo, ACR, IOTA, one of its JSON files. So that's good. So now what I can do is I can go over here to my AKS cluster, which I'll show you running right here. Again, I'm not going to show you some of my details. What I'll show you is I've got this connect button. And when I click that connect button, it's going to open up a handy little window for me to copy out a command, and I will paste that command here. And what that will end up doing is add my live AKS cluster directly to my kubeconfig. So now I can party on that as well as I can on my local. And if I were to switch over here to VS Code, go here again to this fantastic Kubernetes tool, you can see now it's already set that as my default. And if you look here, see how my console has also changed? That also reflects my new cluster I'm going to be partying on, which is good. So now I can just do an aspirate generate And what that is going to do is asking for my password. There we go. Oh, I knew that would happen at least once.
It's part of how it goes.
And Teams just decided to open in a new monitor and on a new monitor. So that's interesting. I'll go ahead and select all components here again. Do I want to deploy the Azure dashboard? Sure. It's going to go ahead and do this. And now what I can do is I can flip over here to this instance of my Azure Container app, my Azure Container Registry. And you can see that I don't have any repositories because this command is still running over here. In a moment, it's going to go ahead and flip to the second one, and I'll hit refresh again. And you'll be able to see that what we're doing is we're pushing those container images directly up into my container registry. We hit refresh, there we are. So there's API service, and in a minute, we'll actually see that web front end will appear in there as well. I'll give that just a minute. Maddy, you might want to scroll through the chat here and come up with some of the related Kubernetes questions or Azure questions we'll get to in a minute. But let me go ahead and get through this because I know we're at time. We've gotten pushed a little bit, but I'll keep going. There we go. So that second one's in there, and it's going to be the same question it asked me before. I'll do if not present. I'll pull it if it's not there. Yes, again, test. We'll call this demo namespace 002 AKS, just for giggles. I would like to journey at the top level. Yeah, sure. Don't want you to do that. And now what it's done, if I flip back over to VS Code here, and I go to this window, what you'll see is that now I've got this Aspirate output with all of these YAML files that I didn't have to write. So it's kind of the same thing when you think about the Aspire manifest. In this case, Aspirate's looking at that manifest and generating Kubernetes-isms, whereas AZD would look at it and generate Azure-isms. That's kind of cool. So at this point, I'm ready to apply it. And now what I'll do is I'll just do Aspirate apply. Yes, use whatever I've done before. Enter. Would you like to enter? Yes. And now you see
things. You don't just hit Y the whole time.
I can hit enter or Y. Sometimes I know if I want to refresh. If I want to start the secret over, if I want to push the two clusters at the same time, it happens. So now I can go over here. I can go to my handy little VS Code window. I can expand my namespaces. You can see there's that namespace I just created. I can click that namespace. Now I have not set up ingress because I don't know how to set up ingress. I'll expand deployments right here. I'll expand one web front end. I'll right click on this. I'll say port forward. Fine. I'll accept the defaults. I'll go right here. I'll type localhost 8080 and I'll hit enter. And now you will see that is me port forwarding localhost 8080 to my AKS cluster running up in the cloud in Azure. Using Aspirate, which is a fantastic little tool. But at this point, Aspirate is the way. Sorry to do a Mandalorian on you. It is the way for you to deploy, .NET Aspire apps up to your Kubernetes cluster. What we're hoping to do is maybe sit on top of Aspirate the way you've seen us sit on top of AZD from within the tools. We don't have a firm plan on that yet. I don't want to lie to you, but it is something we're talking about doing. It's something we know we need to do. The last thing, if you like to clean up, I'm going to go ahead and over here and just do Aspirate destroy and hit enter. Yes, I want you to delete everything. I know it's deleted everything. And now I can go here and I can hit refresh 3 times. And you can see that we've deleted all of the resources and the services and the deployments. And if I hit refresh enough, that namespace will vanish as well. So that kind of shows you how you can just spin in an AKS environment or in any Kubernetes environment using Aspirate the same way that you would spin in the Azure container paths using AZD. So that's it. That's all I got for today. So,
thanks, Brady.
Wow. Cool.
I think we're at time, so I'm not even going to flip back to the slides. We'll let Pablo come in and do the transition. But yeah.
I mean, thank you for saying me that. And even better, I don't need to even make any questions because you made the questions before. So yay for me. But the thing I can say is I'm going to ask Brady before we transition because I want you to always ask. Do you have any last messages, Maddy? I don't know if you're going back, but Maddy and Brady, any last messages for us in this incredible .NET Aspire Dev Day?
Do you have anything?
Yeah, mine is as I was saying in the chat to some folks on YouTube, file your issues. Like, we might not have something today for deployment
Feedback.
that works for you.
Feedback,
Yeah,
folks.
and
Don't,
and we can be super responsive. All the engineers on the Aspire team are amazing, and so like people just like look at the GitHub and have conversations about things. Things are community contributed, community issues, all that stuff. So definitely, continue letting us know, especially with deployment, because we know that there's a lot of opportunity in this space, and AZD and even Aspirate is just kind of the beginning of it all. So
Yep. It is. What Maddie said, what I would say is, having been a CI/CD practitioner for longer than a lot of people listening to this call, probably been alive. What I would say is that there's a lot of different ways to do CI/CD, and there's a lot of different requests that we have from the community. Please keep those coming. If we haven't thought of it yet, we want to hear from you. We do get some odd requests, like support Jenkins and BOS, that kind of thing, stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, like, we're definitely trying to support as many different deployment environments and targets for .NET Aspire as you can come up with. So just keep those issues coming, and we'll keep, trying out features. Thanks a lot.
You listen to them, folks. Help us get that feedback. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Help us. Help us make the greatest product possible for developers in .NET Aspire. So, Brady, Maddy, thank you so much for the incredible presentation.